everyone. Today I'm with Dave Chesson. He is the founder of Kindlepreneur.com and the mind behind Publisher Rocket and the new Atticus. Okay, so welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good. All right. So let's dive in. So how did you start with Kindlepreneur, and how much has the self-publishing world changed since then?
Yeah, well, it was golly, maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago that I really got started into it. At the time, I was trying to figure out how to understand book markets and Amazon and why it chose one book or another. And because, here I was writing these books and I just kept seeing other authors beating me. And I'm like, I know that I wrote a better book. Like, why is it that Amazon chooses that book over mine? And so when I really got into the nitty gritty, I found that information really wasn't out there. And so that's what prompted me to start Kindlepreneur.com, where I could basically teach people and kind of show people what I was working on, what I was discovering. And since then, it's just blossomed out from there. With regards to the markets, they've definitely changed a bit over time. There are a lot of big things. Way back in the day, there's Create Space, if I'm going to date myself, and they got rid of that.
Yeah.
Amazon ads didn't exist at the time. We also didn't have a whole bunch of these other components. And so yeah, in truth, Amazon's really been working to try to increase their sales is kind of the best way to look at it. And so they're coming up with things and they're trying to help us help themselves, maybe sometimes help us to improve our book marketing.
Yeah. But talking about that, do you think that now the book market is really becoming, I don't know, a kind of a pay-to-play world, or?
No, I mean, there is the paid to play component. Absolutely. But there are a lot of authors too that are succeeding without having to do advertisements or things like that. Plus, there are a lot of different ways that one can kind of enter into the market. Case in point, for those who wrote books and then have like email opt-ins and then they build up that email list. Well, the next time that they come out with a book, they have an even stronger launch process. They have a stronger launch team. Plus, they've learned things. And so authors are able to stack as they go. Can you do advertisements and pay to play and increase the speed at which you'll see your success? Sure, definitely. And truth be told, back in the day when we didn't have Amazon ads, authors had to go without such a kind of, ace up the sleeve, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have any suggestions for Amazon ads? Because you also run a kind of course about it.
Yeah, Amazon ads is one of those things where I try to tell authors it is not this quick little thing that you can just kind of put together, set it up once, and then it's good. You got to be kind of devoted to it. And even more so is that you got to treat it like a skill. If somebody wanted to start juggling 6 balls at the same time, they don't just start with 6, right? As a matter of fact, they don't just try it once and then, they start juggling 6 balls at the same time. Instead, they start off with 2 and they build up from there and they work and they learn and they grow to 3 and then 4 and 5. And so if you treat Amazon ads like that, I think that you will see much greater success. You can't just dabble in it, throw in a couple of bids, and then magically you're doing amazing. Instead, you just got to say, okay, well, that didn't work. Now let me try this. It's also really hard to teach what I call advanced ads because every book / every genre / every type is going to be different. It's different advertising on fiction versus nonfiction. Your very niche book, you wrote on something like pressure cookers in RVs, right? It doesn't matter how great your advertisement is. You're not going to go beyond a certain market size, right? Or air fryers, if you did something on air fryers, okay, you'll have a larger market than the deep fryers on RVs. Like, again, it's really hard to kind of generalize marketing for advertisement. And so what I do in the course, that free course at amscourse.com, is authors can go in, they can learn and understand Amazon's system, have some guidance. But then the key part, and I talk about this in the course, is that you then have to go and experience, and you have to test, and you have to ask yourself the question why. And when you can find those answers, you will start to build intuition. And when you have intuition, that's where you're close to mastery, because you can intuitively look at your situation and make better decisions faster. I think that's really the key to the ads.
Yeah, that's right. Because sometimes we tend to, generalize and rely too much on fixed numbers. But actually, yeah, we have to rely more on our own numbers because our case is kind of unique, right?
Exactly. I get the question all the time of like, hey, here's my click-through rate, here's my conversion rate. Is that good? And I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, but I thought you're the master. I'm like, on my books, yes, I know what my good click-through rate is, but it doesn't mean that that's the right click-through rate for you. If you're in lit RPG fantasy, you're going to have a completely different, what should be a success metric, than for this person in language learning. And those things can be vastly different. Another thing that really affects it too is that maybe your ads are really set up well, but your book cover is just horrible. Like, it doesn't matter how good your advertisement capability is, you're just not going to get clicks.
Yeah.
And that's why I also like to talk about what I call the symbiotic relationship between your book cover, title, book description, and your marketing efforts. If you have a horrible cover and a book description that's vague or weird or just not understandable, it does not matter if you have the greatest marketing efforts in the world, you will fail because it's just not going to work. Same thing with if you wrote the greatest book in the world, but you covered it in a bad cover and you don't do marketing, it's not going to succeed unless you win the lottery. So it's one of these things where all these things they work together. And so sometimes we'll have people where get really bad, they've worked really hard and they had a really bad experience with ads. And then you go to the book cover and it's like, this cover doesn't look professional, or this cover makes me feel like this is dark urban fantasy. And you're telling me that this is a young romantic YA. Like, of course, nobody's buying it because they're thinking they're getting one. They read the description. They're like, oh, this is not what I was looking for. And they're backing out. So, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of layers to the onion.
Yeah. So you mentioned about the book description. So what do you think about it? How can we improve and have a good book description?
Well, I like to think of a book description like an elevator pitch. When you step on the elevator and you've got to convince somebody within 30 seconds that your pitch is good, that's kind of a good way to look at book descriptions. Another thing that I like to do too is that while I'm working on a book, people are always asking me, right, hey Dave, what are you writing? Or when they ask you what do you do and you say you're a writer, next thing they say is, oh, what do you write? Well, that's when I actually test my book description, because I'll say an idea and I'll watch their face to see if they care. Now, granted, you may say, well, I write a romance, and that what if that person doesn't like romance? Yeah, okay, but you can also still tell when a non-romance person is like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, and a lot of that really comes down to your hook. And so a lot of times I'm just practicing the hook and I'm altering it and improving it and adding to it every time I meet somebody and they ask me that question. Oh, what do you write? Or what are you working on?
Cool. And because also, the formatting of the book description, I think, is quite important, but a lot of authors don't really care about it.
Yeah, well, one thing for sure is if you have a giant block of text as book description, internet shoppers are lazy. It's true. We all are. We really are. We are so quick to click the back button. So if you have this giant block of text, that just feels like it's more work than necessary for the reader, and they'll just click back and they'll go look for another book that's broken it down into bite-sized chunks. Same thing with nonfiction. Like, I kind of want to I don't want to read your entire book description. I want to skim, and what I'm trying to do is validate whether or not this is the right book for me. And if you haven't made those things stick out, if you haven't made it clear to me what it is, then, and I like to call it, you'll burn brain calories, right? You're going to make them burn extra brain calories trying to figure out your book. And when you confuse, you lose. So using formatting can help the reader either A, get started into reading your book description, and B, get them skimming and pulling the best information quickly. If you do those two things, you're going to have a higher conversion rate.
Cool, good. One more thing about book description. Do you know, you of course know, if it's a good idea to stuff it with keywords? Because there are authors who do that, and then
stuffing it with keywords, by using the word stuffing, then the answer is no. I do not believe that you should just start throwing random keywords in there. However, though, one of the things I do recommend to authors is that when you are doing your keyword research, right, keywords are the words that your target market uses in order to find the book they want. Well, when you're doing your research and you're building this list of keywords, understand that you've now got a list of words that your target reader uses when thinking of the book that they want. That's really powerful in terms of your marketing. And so what I like to do is that I'll write my book description and then I'll go through and I'll change out words in the book description to be more aligned with what they're looking for. So case in point, like if I'm looking at a sci-fi military book, right, I might write a book description that does tell the story, but then I realized, oh man, I should really be using sci-fi military style words. Intergalactic, planetary battle, bombardment, orbital space bombardment instead of, attacks from space, right? There's these ways to put more brevity, and more excitement and more niche focused terms so that when the reader is reading your book description, they're like, oh man, this is my jam. This is my kind of, fiction. Same thing with nonfiction too. Look, if I did my research and I'm writing a book on lower back pain and the person said, describes needle, or sharp lower back pain, then man, I should use sharp because, hey, if the person's describing the book they're looking for and saying sharp lower back pain, I'm like, do you have sharp lower back pain? Bam. That person's going to be like, yes, this book knows what I'm talking about. I want it. So to recap on that, if you find yourself just throwing in a whole bunch of words because you think it's going to game the system and your book's going to show up more, I don't agree with that. But I do agree with looking at your book description and thinking about using these words correctly inside of it so as to power it up and connect better with your reader.
Cool. So if we think that Amazon can detect the keywords in our description,
Amazon does index the words in the description. A9.com, A9 is the name of their search engine algorithm. It's actually a company. They develop the way that Amazon processes words and shows the right products. There used to be a website called A9.com where you could actually go to learn about that company. And it was a sub company under Amazon. However, though, about a year or two ago, there was a bit of a public kerfuffle between the two. And there was a Wall Street Journal article that came out where A9 employees were publicly speaking about how Amazon was trying to get them to change the way they show products so that Amazon products showed up first over other products. And immediately Amazon shut down the A9 website, took the A9 company that was like its own company and put it right under the vice president of marketing on Amazon. And we haven't heard from them since. But before that happened, straight up on their own website, they flat out said, we index the words in product descriptions and book descriptions to help show people better products. So they even say that that's exactly what they do. We also did an experiment to test to kind of see what would happen. And we found that was correct. But here's how it works, though. Amazon's A9 algorithm does not take full sentences. Okay. It doesn't work in sentences. Nobody writes into Amazon, I would like a red shirt that has, green collar. Yeah. No, people say red shirt, green collar. So it doesn't process a full sentence. It just looks for the kind of words that it would expect for your kind of book. So it wouldn't say, John Riker was on the captain's deck, conducting orbital bombardment. No, what it would pull out is captain's deck, orbital bombardment, because it knows that this is a sci-fi military, and those are words that correlate with sci-fi military, and so it uses that. And it's because of this situation where some authors may disagree and say, no, they don't use a book description, because authors will take a full sentence, put it in the search bar and say, look, Amazon doesn't show anything, so clearly it doesn't index. Or they'll also make up a word and they'll put in the book description, and then they'll search for that word and it won't show up. That's because the algorithm doesn't register those things. It doesn't work in sentences, and it doesn't make up words.
Yeah, that's right. Because I tried with a fantasy book, and there was the name of that place, one of the places in the book, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, because
So
it doesn't register it as an existing thing. So what it's doing is it's not indexing every word in your book description. It's only looking and seeing that these are clear genre specific or subject specific words, and clearly it's covering these things. Let's go ahead and use that to make sure this product shows up better. It's not saying, oh man, here's a full sentence or something like that. One way to really visualize this in action is that if you look at a book's, so if you go to a book sales page and you scroll down to where the reviews are, you'll notice these boxes at the top of the reviews. And these are kind of like density word cloud boxes. What those boxes are is that Amazon is looking for key specific words in the reviews that somebody left. And then if you click on one of those boxes, it will show all those reviews that use that word or phrase. Now, you're not going to find he is, they went. No, it's not looking for that. It's looking for three types actually of words inside the reviews. One, book details. So like title, author name, like those are book details. Got it. Then review specific phrases that they know are helpful. Like, what is it? It's like fast pace or, high stakes, or, something that would be used in a review. Another thing that you'll also see in there too is if somebody got a review copy, you'll see that it'll say review copy. So then you can see all the reviews that have review copy. But the third one is the most important, which is keywords specific to that genre. So you would see galactic, you would see space battle, you would see, battle cruiser, right? Because it knows you're not going to see romance, you're not going to see kissing, because it knows this. And I think that right there is a visual display of exactly how Amazon does the same thing to the book description itself. They already show you how they do it on reviews.
cool. One more thing about keywords. I remember a test that you ran, I think last year maybe, to find out about how to better use, the 7 boxes that we have on Amazon KDP for the keywords that we can assign to our books. So what have you found out?
Yeah, well, the way that Amazon works inside those 7 Kindle keyword boxes is that it uses different combinations of the words inside the box. So if you say red dragon battle, I don't know, something like that, it will, if it shows results for these things, it will put your book in it, which is dragon red battle, red dragon, all those different combinations. Now, red dragon battle, if you type that into Amazon, it's probably going to come back and say no results. Well, they're not going to just stuff your book in there, but they have red dragon. So clearly, that will indicate them, even though you didn't say red dragon, maybe you said dragon red. The point though is it uses all the different combinations inside of it for anything that they would naturally search. And so that helps. But we also found out too that what we call word density is important. So say, for example, you put red dragon battle crusader. Okay. Well, you're not going to rank as high if you just put battle crusader than with all 4 of those words. So in the end, my recommendation to authors is that when you do your keyword research, say there are like 2 or 3 terms that you really, really love, then don't stuff words around them. Just put those 2 to 3 terms in their own boxes. And then for the rest of the boxes, go ahead and put other words that really, that are a good fit, but weren't the best.
Okay. So how many words can we put actually?
You can put 50 characters, and a character is a letter or space. So however many words you can fit inside 50 characters, that's how many.
Cool.
And one thing to note too is do not put commas or quotation marks or any of those kind of things, because, and even Amazon right there in the box says, please don't do that. The reason for that is that it kind of messes with their programming. And when you put the commas, you were separating and saying, do not combine these words with anything else, which hurts you. And then when you put quotation marks, you're saying only this exact phrase and nothing else. It's kind of like a Boolean search criterion for algorithms. And so if you put those quotations around it, you will only show up for that term and nothing else. Or, any synonyms or any pluralizations, nothing, just the exact term. So you'll really shoot yourself in the foot on that. So, and they even ask you don't do it.
Cool. Okay. So how can we find these keywords? Because, for example, you have Publisher Rocket, right?
Yep.
Your software. I think it's pretty good, honestly. Maybe
Cool.
it's probably the best that we can find. Can you talk about it?
Sure. Well, so there's some manual ways in which you can kind of do some keyword research. You could start generating your own list that you think of, any words that come to mind. You can start putting those words or phrases into Amazon and see what they suggest. Those suggestions are previous searches that that shoppers have made, and then maybe that helps to stem further ideas, so you can build those words. You can also click on the books that show up for those keywords and look to see if they're really making sales. Because if they're not making any sales whatsoever, then either A, nobody's typing it into Amazon, or B, they're typing something in, but they're not getting the kind of book they want. So you could do this process over and over again. And back in the day before Rocket, I used to do this all the time. And I had spreadsheets, I was tracking, I was kind of looking how much money did this book make, and I would even look at trends. And let's face it, nobody wants to be in a Excel sheet, trying to figure this thing out. So that's what really got me started in creating Publisher Rocket, is that not only will it do all of what we just said, lickety split, but that it will also go even further and tell you the estimated searches per month. So the program then looks at the word and says, well, here's the estimated number of people that type in that exact phrase into Amazon. And that right there is a really powerful number for an author to use to kind of understand if it's a good keyword or bad keyword. Another thing that we do too is we look at a whole bunch of components and help to give a competition score. So, and the score is from 1 to 100, with 1 being ridiculously easy and 100 being impossible. So that way it's like, oh, wow, this keyword looks great. But then you look and it's like a 99 in competitive score. You're like, okay, yeah, but I'm never going to benefit from it. So might not want to focus on that one, might not want to give that keyword its own box, but maybe it's something I stuff into one of the others with other words.
Yeah, and also categories, because there are actually many authors don't know that, but there are so many categories on Amazon, especially Amazon US.
Yeah, there are
Right?
over 11,000 categories on Amazon US. And what's crazy is that when authors go to publish their book on Amazon, Amazon will say, please select a category. And when you click on that, it pops this box up, and then you can see this list of categories. Here's the kicker, though. Those aren't categories. Those are BISACs. And BISACs is an international standard categorization code. And really what it is that, just kind of step back from this, back in the day when a publisher would create a book, they would just come up with whatever category they thought it was. And then they would send it off to the stores, and the stores would look at this category and be like, well, we only have 17 aisles. We don't have this category. They didn't say fantasy. They said something else. I think it's under fantasy. So they'll go put it on the fantasy shelf, and then kind of find out it wasn't, it was spiritual, and now you've got a spiritual book on the wrong shelf. This hurts the publisher. This hurts the store. This confuses the shopper. So then everybody got together and said, hey, we need to have this standard codes. Okay. And so that way they created these 4,800 plus codes. And when you go to publish your book, you select from one of those 4,800 codes. Now, when the store gets the book, the store knows that, hey, this group of codes goes on this aisle automatically. And then this group of codes goes to this aisle. And so now the mom and pop shop with 10 aisles, right, knows exactly where the BISAC fits all the time. And this giant store, well, it turns out they actually have an aisle just for that code. So cool, it goes there. And this made things much easier. So when you go to Amazon to go publish your book, you're actually accessing that code and you're saying, hey, Amazon, I'll select this code. And Amazon's like, cool. And then they translate that into what is their categories. Now, like we said, there's 4,800 BISACs. There's 11,000 Amazon categories. So a couple things happen here. Sometimes you get put, because you selected this BISAC, you may get put in a category you didn't think you were going to get into, or that you didn't want. That happens a lot. We have a lot of authors that look as like, what the heck? I didn't ask for this. And it's like, well, that's how Amazon assigned your BISAC to this category. Then the second thing that also happens too is that most authors, when they select a BISAC, they get put in one of those 4,800 Amazon categories. Well, unless they were listening to this or they were learning from, us, those authors are now in the most competitive categories in all of Amazon because those are the same categories everybody gets stuck into, which means there's over 6,000 categories out there that aren't being used as much. So one of the processes that authors should do is that when they go to publish their book, they still have to select a BISAC. So select the 2 BISACs, hit publish, then immediately turn around and there's a form online. If you just type in like Amazon categories, I've got an article and you can find that link. Click the link, and now you can submit the categories you want to be a part of, and you can go up to 10. Now you could start being added in the categories that most authors don't even know about. And that's how you have a much higher chance of hitting your bestseller status and benefiting from the categories.
Right. Yeah. So, for example, Publisher Rocket can really help with this process and speed it up. I mean, because it's kind of overwhelming, looking at all the categories.
Inside the program, we have all 11,000 Amazon categories. There's a lot of great ways to help you look for them, whether it's you start with the main category and then see them all, or you can start typing in words into our search bar. And if those words are anywhere in a category string, it will show up. What's really important about this too is a lot of authors don't know, but like you will find the same category in 5 different main categories. An example I like to use is like, for example, you may type in science fiction military, right? Well, yeah, that's in science fiction and fantasy. It's also in what is it? Literary fiction. I think it's literary fiction is another one. It's also in young adult. It's also in children's. It's also in nonfiction science. I don't get, because it's called sci-fi, but it's so weird that would show up in a nonfiction. Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm missing another one. But the key is that most authors, when they're looking for sci-fi military, right, they just think science fiction and fantasy. They don't think of the literary fiction one. That's always got, just about every fiction is in that one. And so you'll find that in the science fiction and fantasy, you might need to sell 300 books a day to be bestseller, but in literary fiction, you only need to sell like 40, a lot easier accomplishment.
Yeah, good. Also, I noticed that recently Publisher Rocket was open to the German market.
Yes.
UK, but also German. So do you think, should we start thinking about, getting our books translated into German?
The German market is definitely a hotter market than most. It's definitely been picking up. But that being said, though, translation can be costly. So I would only do that if a couple of things occurred. Number one, if you're having some very high success in the US, there's a good chance that can also translate, pun somewhat intended, into the German market as well. Another thing, too, is a lot of German readers actually read and speak English. There was some weird statistic, and I don't have a link to this, but I once read something where there's more English readers in Germany than there is the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was, I think it was because of population size, but that most Germans are taught in English. And so there are times where your book in English on the German market is actually selling. And if you're seeing that could be a clear indication that you've got a good opportunity, that translating your book and then putting it in the German market may help it out very well. But I would say that if you don't see those two things going on, don't think that just kind of doing a Hail Mary and throwing it into the German market will, be worth the cost of the translation.
Yeah. By the way, are you thinking about new features for Publisher Rocket to be added in the future?
Yeah, actually, we have a new update on our keyword feature coming out in a couple of weeks, where you'll be able to sort the keyword feature, sort them. You'll also, when you export, it will only export that which you analyzed, or you could choose to export the whole list. So you have that choice. We're also giving kind of a red, yellow, green metric to kind of help you see if that's a good number or a bad number.
Oh, that's useful. Yeah.
So that's coming out. Then on top of that too, we're also going to be providing historical category data very soon. So when you look at those 11,000 categories, you can click on one and you can actually see the sales trends, as well as, the number of competitors that are, or number of books that are listed in that category. And you can see how that's increased or decreased over time.
Wow.
So if you're looking at getting into a genre or something, you can look at that category and see it's like, well, it's kind of tanking. There's a lot less sales, or, oh man, it's taking off. That's not a bad time to get involved. And so you'll get that as well.
Cool. Okay. All right. So changing the topic, what about Kindle Vella? What's your opinion on it, and how can we take advantage from it? Is it good for us, you think, for us authors?
Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of like when you see a new social media thing pop up, right? So many of them pop up and then they die. There's a lot of fervor about it. It's new and it never comes to fruition. I mean, we can all go through all the dead ones like Meerkat, Periscope. I remember back in the day, everybody was telling me I needed to get on Periscope. And I'm like, I don't want to. And then sure enough, like, everybody was telling me 6 months later, it's like, most people probably don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was reading this morning about Clubhouse.
Yeah, Clubhouse.
Subscriptions are going down now.
Yeah, and that was the kicker is that it took them forever to get the Android phone app or something, and then by the time they got it, now it's like people are dropping it. So my take on it is that just like social media, is that a lot of them come and a lot of them die. That being said, though, is that if you jumped on one of those back in the day and you really worked it from the beginning, those people usually benefit the most if it does win, right?
Yeah.
So I think Vella's kind of the same way. It's a good chance it could fall on its face and nobody cares. But now imagine if you're the author that really invested and went into it, and then it takes off, you're probably going to be set to make the most money and benefit huge. I mean, it's kind of like the first ever people that got involved in KDP. When KDP came out, Kindle Direct Publishing, man, you could write anything and you made money, right? But you also had to figure it out. There weren't Kindlepreneur.com. There wasn't, YouTube videos. You were in the wild, wild west. Yeah. But every one of those guys that invested into that and really got into it, they made some good money. And then when finally it got easier or people were able to understand it, then more people entered into the market. I think Vella's going to be potentially the same. My other insight on this is that I think the reason why Amazon created Vella is because they saw 4 other markets out there doing it, and Amazon wanted to crush them, basically. Yeah. That's what it is. I was like, no, you can't have that. We're going to make it ourselves. So that to me says a couple of things. Number one, I think Amazon is interested in putting enough money into it because they have a competitive reason to do it. They're not just doing it because it's a nice idea. They're doing it because somebody else is doing it, and those guys are making money, and Amazon doesn't want that.
So if it's working for them, yeah.
So it's an idea that has already worked in a market, and it's enough that it garnered the Eye of Sauron, which is what I call Amazon, the Eye of Sauron, a little Tolkien reference there, like, whoa, hey, look at that. Let's do that. So that gives me more credibility to the program just because there is a financial reason why Amazon really wants this to happen. But again, it could be a crapshoot. It could be one of those things where, roll of the dice and it doesn't work out. But for those who are really get invested in it, if it does work out, they're going to stand to benefit the most.
Let's say from a strategic point of view, I want to start with experimenting with Vella, and let's say you have no books to upload. So you're gonna write a book for that. Would you write rather a long book, which you can divide in many chapters, maybe with a lot of cliffhangers, especially at the end of each chapter, to keep the readers going? Or would you rather maybe plan for a series of, short readings? What would be best, you think?
Yeah, I can't answer this as a marketer. I can only answer this as a customer, right? That's kind of the best way that I'm looking at this, because I don't have any data to be able to support anything I'm going to say. So I can only make my personal preference. And my
Yeah.
personal preference would be, I would hate to be paying for pieces of a book. Like, what I mean by that is that if somebody were to break up one book into, we'll say, like 10 different chapters, and I had to keep buying each chapter, at some point I would be like, dang it, I just want to buy the darn book. Like, why not just give me the book? I don't see, because it's so cheap, I don't see the benefit of me having to constantly cash in to get the next chapter or the next whatever. But I could be completely wrong. I'm also not the typical reader. So as a marketer, I really can't answer that question. But as a personal buyer, I think I'd much rather read some cool short stories. Or better yet, what I think is the best opportunity is short stories within the world of a book that I've read. So say, for example, Viridian Gate Online is a phenomenal lit RPG series that I absolutely love. And it's got a giant world building, right? It's basically people are trapped in a game, a fantasy game, right? And they get more powerful as they keep going through the game. There's no end game or anything. You just kind of keep playing. It's like World of Warcraft kind of situation. Well, it would be really cool for that author to make some short, what we call side quests. That's what they say in like the fantasy games, side quests. You go on a side quest instead of the main quest.
It's kind of a spin-off, let's say.
Yeah, a spin-off where, hey, just tell me this one time where the character that was at some point in the main story, but we didn't need to hear it, went on a dungeon raid. Cool, or the one time that this one character got arrested for drunken debauchery because he is a drunk, and how he escaped. Like, these are ways that those writers of a popular book could cash in extra and keep fans reading and keep fans engaged while they come out with the next big book in the series. I think that that'd be a really cool idea. I'd love to see that. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's really, I agree with you. I think, yeah, it might be a really good idea, actually. All right, so last topic, formatting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is formatting a book so crucial? And because some authors still, they just, I don't know, put a chunk of text and publish it, with Pages or Microsoft Word, and boom, it's done.
Yeah. Formatting, it's kind of like, we talked about how professional your book cover is, right? I'm not gonna invest in your book if your book looks like you didn't put a little elbow grease in it, that you didn't do anything that makes it unique or just look good for that matter. I'm definitely not going to buy your book if you misspelled the title or something, like these are all things that could stop somebody from making that decision. I think it's a wise decision. If an author doesn't take the time to make a professional cover, then did they really take the time to write a professional book? It's a fair question.
Yeah.
And so while we all like to say the whole don't judge a book by its cover, the fact of the matter is that if I'm going to invest money into your book and the time to read it, I'm going to judge the cover. And I think the cover is kind of an outward way. Well, the same thing with the book too, is when I get into the book or when I'm doing the look inside by Amazon and I see that, wow, clearly no care was put into, the layout of this, or these images look funky. That's not only going to hurt the chance that I'll buy it, but that'll also probably be in my review. If the images don't look right, or, if I have orphans and widows showing up where they shouldn't, I'm going to say something. So I think it's a really important part for your professionalism as well as the reader experience.
Yeah. And so what kind of tools do we have? You should know that because you're about to release something very cool, you know.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is this. Formatting it can be a real pain in the butt. You know, it can also be really expensive. You get a professional formatter, and the reason why the expenses can really jack up with a professional formatter is that, say the person formats it, it's going to be, a couple $100, to get the ebook and book version of it. But here's where it gets really bad. The next time you do another book, you got to do that again and again and again. And even worse is, what if you have to do an update to a book? Guess what? You're going to have to get it reformatted. Now, I'd highly recommend that if you hire a formatter, try to get them to put in their terms and contracts that they will do minor edits and changes and reformat for free. Good luck, though. A lot of them will hate that, but
Yeah.
I've lost a couple $100 because I found out that a certain section hadn't been edited correctly and that it needed to be re-uploaded. Well, you can't just go into your PDF and change some things. It just doesn't work that way, and same thing with, you can't just open up an EPUB and make it happen. So that's one of the concerns about hiring formatters. So then you turn to software, and there are things like Scrivener that will quote unquote export, but it takes, there's actually a full-blown paid course on Udemy on just how to format using Scrivener. So clearly not an easy thing. Then you've got some really awesome tools like Calibri or Judo that they allow you to do a lot of really cool stuff. The problem about that, though, is that it also is super techy. You've got to really know your HTML. You've got to understand your coding. Judo kind of is easier than Calibri, I think, but Judo hasn't been updated in 9-10 years or something like that. It's, so there's that. And then finally you get to Velum, and Velum did a phenomenal job in creating a very aesthetic, clean, easy to use program. What's awesome about it is it's a WYSIWYG, so it's what you see is what you get. So as you're making changes to your formatting, you can look to the right and you can see on that device the changes you're making. And I mean, it's really ruled the roost because it's cool. It's easy. But some of the problems with them, though, is they only work on Mac. So PC users can't use it unless you either buy a Mac or use Mac and Cloud to try to get to it, and that gets clunky. The other thing too is it's very expensive. To get both ebooks and books, you have to pay $250. So for me, I looked at that and I saw really kind of an opening of market that there's got to be a way to create the aesthetic, easy use that Velum has. But there's also a lot of customization that they don't do. And then on top of that, make it work on all platforms, not just Mac and PC, but Chromebook, iPhones, Androids, and that sort of thing. And so that's what we did was we created Atticus.io, which basically does what Velum does, but we're going to be adding even more customization capabilities so that authors have more control. We're making it $100 cheaper than Velum, and it works on all the platforms.
Yeah, and also I noticed you have other features like Scrivener. When you create your book, when you're writing your book, you're plotting, and also you can share it with your editor or something like that, right?
Yeah, so those are features that we're going to be coming out with. So you can write. What we're starting off with is right now, Atticus is a place where you can write your book and that you can also format your book. We're right now focusing on adding more features for formatting, making it even better. And I think that's over the next month. And then after that, we're pivoting over to the writing. We're going to be adding the plotting, the character cards, world setting, and then also the collaboration. And so collaboration will make it that inside of your Atticus, you can work with editors, you can work with formatters if you wanted to, you can work with beta readers, and you can control what they see and what they can do, all the while not having to leave the program.
Wow, that's amazing. And also the pictures, because I always find it's hard, with the pictures to organize them, and it's just a mess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with Atticus, it's gonna be kind of easier, I guess, right?
Yeah, much easier.
Nice. So even, for example, what if I have comics?
Well, We're not set for like a full picture scale because you're going to have to really like move and drag. Same thing with picture books for like children and things like that. But we do have some plans that once we finished on writing and collaboration, we want to start to kind of build some way that would allow for comic creation as well. But also too, for comics specifically, Amazon has a free program out there. It's like, I can't remember what it's called, Comic Creator or something like that.
Yeah.
That's actually really stellar. And it allows interactive use for EPUB version as well. But we think there's some components that we can improve on.
Okay, last question. So Atticus, is it like a software or a kind of online platform that you can use?
It's kind of the best of both worlds. So what happens is that when you purchase it, you then sign in, you sign up, right? Online on the platform. And what you can do is you can go to app.atticus.io and sign in from any computer you want. So that way, if you're at your grandmother's house or something like that, and you want to work on her computer, or, you know, your laptop goes kaput and you got to borrow your daughter's or something like that, you can just open up a browser and start working away, and all of your work and collections are right there. However, though, we also have this ability that if you use Chrome, okay, to log in, you'll notice that Chrome will have a little button right in the search bar where you can click that and it will download Atticus onto your computer. So now you can put it in your apps folder or on your taskbar or on your desktop, whatever. And then that way you can open up Atticus and you can use it right there in your computer. This is what allows you to work offline. So once you've done that, you can take your laptop, go to the coffee shop and do your work. The only times you would need to be connected to the internet when you have it downloaded onto your computer is when either you need to log in, okay, because it needs to connect to the system to verify.
Yeah.
But once you've logged in, you won't need to log in later, okay? So if you've logged off, you're going to need the internet connection to log in, okay?
Yeah.
The second thing is if you want to format the book, if you want to actually click the export button for your book. We use a whole bunch of systems online to then do the crunching so that way it's not this giant heavy software on your computer. But for anybody who's like, but that's important, I was like, well, the truth is that if you're exporting, you're going to need the internet anyways to upload it to the market. So you should be fine on that front. But you can take it out to the woods, do your writing, even format the book, make it look the way you want. The only thing you can't do is hit the export button when you're ready. You'll need the internet for that.
Okay.
So now that developing the software like that has a lot of benefits. And this is why I called it the best of both worlds. First off is that when we update the program, it happens automatically. Like you don't see it. Like, you don't have to re-download something new. So that's really cool. It allows us to quickly create new features and improve and fix things. The second thing is that because we have that online component, that's what's going to allow us to have that collaboration, that ability for an editor to go in and edit on her computer and you can see real time that, she's making these changes, or he or she. So that allows us to do that. And then, like I said, we have the download onto your computer. Later on, we're going to be able to come out with a way for you to save locally on your computer. But when you save locally on your computer, your works, you'll also have a backup online. So now you got double protection. So in case something happens to your computer, you don't lose all of your work.
Yeah, that sounds terrible otherwise, Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dave. Wow, it's a pleasure to chat with you. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can we find you online?
Sure. Well, you can find me at kindlepreneur.com. I've got a contact page there. So if there was any questions that people have based off of our conversation here, they can always go to that and I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, cool. Last question, because I forgot before. When will the Atticus be officially released,
Well, right now, we actually have it kind of on a private trial. So if people sign up on atticus.io, we can send an email. And the key is that we want to kind of keep the numbers low so that we can work directly with authors and kind of get feedback, find any bugs, whack them, add more features, and that sort of thing. I believe that we will publicly launch, I would say, in about a month, maybe a month and a half. because we really just want to make sure that we make it as awesome as possible for authors before we really go full out on it. So
I'm sure it will. It will be awesome. Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and we wish you all the best for your projects.
absolutely. And again, thanks for having me.
Thank you.